Well, we just made a couple of Vietnam videos, and we need to do something a little lighter. So we're going to do a book review, and the book review that we're going to do is another one of my treasured books. But saying it's a treasured book, please don't make any comments until you get to the end of the video, because you need to see exactly what I say about this book, because the book is Stuart Lake's He Carried a Six-Shooter. It's the life story, the true life story of Wyatt Earp and all of his exciting adventures by Stuart N Lake. And Stuart N Lake tells the story. He's passed away a long time. But Stuart N Lake says this book has never been a more authentic book because he was a personal friend of Wyatt Earp. He spent 4 years sitting with Wyatt Earp. Yes, he did, sitting with him, talking to him and writing notes. And then after spending 4 years sitting with Wyatt Earp, talking and chatting, writing down after that, he then spent 6 years writing to make sure that he could pursue newspaper articles and get all the facts straight for this to be the most authentic book ever written about a history of a person. 2 years, so Wyatt Earp died in 1929, the year my dad was born. He died at the age of 80 in 1929, and 2 years later, 1931, this book is released, a huge acclaim in America. Now, hang on. Now, when I say this book is released, what's slightly interesting is if you look at this book and you look at the cover and you look at the title, what it used to say was Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal, Stuart, and it was exactly the same as this, exactly the same. They had a slightly different title, which was Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal. So that was the 1931 version. Now, what happened is that huge success, but never actually gets released in the UK. So in 1952, this book, with a slightly different changed title, He Carried a Six-Shooter, this is released in the UK, 52, and it is such a massive success in October of 52 that in January of 53 it is republished a second run, print run, because it's such a massive success. So this version is a second print run from January 1953. It's a treasured item. So what I want to read, while I quickly think of it, this book went on to influence My Darling Clementine, starring Henry Fonda, and it was done by John Ford. That's why I got them muddled up. It was done by John Ford, Henry Fonda, and if you ever watch the movie, it's in my collection. If you ever watch, it's a great movie because I like John Ford. I like his black and white photography. He's a master of black and white, and I like Henry Fonda. But my God, when you watch that movie, it's about as accurate as, I don't know, as an episode of Family Guy or The Simpsons, nuclear reactors. You know, it's a shocking movie in some ways and it's great in other ways. So I can understand why some people, historians, might dislike John Ford for what the hell he did in My Darling Clementine of facts and reality. But anyway, it also influenced the movie Jimmy Stewart in Winchester 73. And Winchester, I like Jimmy Stewart as a cowboy, and I like the movie Winchester 73, but there is a scene in Winchester 73 that I can barely watch. And that's the shooting competition, for the love of... So there's a shooting competition, and there's a medallion, and these two guys are so good they can't split them. They're both perfect. Talk about pinching the story of Robin Hood. Anyway, they can't split them up. So in the end, they get a little medallion that's got a hole in the middle of it. And they throw it up in the air, and one guy boom, shoots, and the coin lands, and it hasn't been hit. And then Jimmy Stewart comes up for his shot. They throw the coin in the air, and he shoots, and it hasn't been hit. And then Jimmy Stewart says, because Wyatt Earp, yet again, Wyatt Earp from this book, is the judge of the shooting competition. And Jimmy Stewart says, oh, I think in his usual modest, quiet way, says, I think you should check that medallion again. And when Wyatt Earp looks at it, he says, my God, he put the bullet through the hole in the middle of a tossed coin, spun in the air, Winchester lever action, open iron sights, and he put the bullet through the hole in the spinning medallion. What a fair income. I can barely, as you can tell by my raving about it when I'm supposed to be talking about this book, Stuart Lake's book. Wonderful story about Wyatt Earp. Now, what I'd like to do, look at this horse. What do you do? What do you do? You look like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, don't you, when you do that? That's clearly where they got the modelling from for a T-Rex. Look at that. It looks just like a T-Rex, don't you, mate? We're supposed to be doing Stuart Lake, not Jurassic Park. Okay, so just bear with for a minute. We're nearly done. Leave the flag. Leave the flag. For goodness sake, don't drop that flag. 50% of our viewers are Americans. If that flag goes on the ground, we are in big trouble. Anyway, what I really wanted to do is I just wanted to read, see if I can read out what they've said about this book in the dust cover. This is a true story, the story of a man who has been rightly called one of the bravest men who ever lived. Wyatt Earp was a man of action, the greatest gunfighting marshal the Old West has ever known. Not only was he a fearless fighter with a 45, but he possessed the magnetic power that could subdue the dirtiest rustler or bad man that Dodge City or Tombstone could throw up. The old frontier days come to life in this vivid, colourful biography. It is exciting as the most sensational fiction. There's a sentence. Wyatt Earp's adventures begin early and continue all his life. He hunted buffalo on the range. He conveyed coaches through waylaying hold-up men and cleaned up boom cow towns and the roughest mining settlements. Read of the sawn-off shotgun duel with Curly Bill or the Battle of the OK Corral. The very names stir the imagination. Who would not want to know more of Bat Masterson, Happy Jack Morocco, Shanghai Pierce and Johnny Behind the Deuce? This is a book that is impossible to put down. MacDonald Hastings, quoting from his comments in the Strand magazine, where this book was partly serialised last year, 1951 that was, writes, I felt this was the biography of one of the most courageous and colourful personalities I have ever heard of. The obvious care with which the facts have been authenticated convinced me that, for the first time ever, I was getting the true historical truth about the gunfighters and cowboys I'd read about in fiction since my school days. Philip Lindsay says, I'm proud and delighted to have my name attached to this book. He wrote an introduction to it, also glowing praises. And then it closes by saying, about the author, Stuart Lake was a personal friend of Wyatt Earp, in whose company he spent 4 years collecting information, checking facts, and searching out data for this book, which took 6 years to complete. So this, highly recommend you read it. Wonderful book. Fabulous photos all through it. Fabulous, fabulous photos. And since it's come out in 1931, it has been found to be pretty much a complete fabrication. So anyway, it's still well worth the read, and then perhaps afterwards it's worth some research on all the things that didn't really happen, got made up. Stuart Lake, while he was still alive, and when some of the things were put to him, hey mate, he said, well, Wyatt didn't like to talk much. Anyway, end of a book review. I think we can tell. We have just done a couple of really long Vietnam videos. Don't worry, because they're going to be seriously edited. But nonetheless, this lad has to put up with it while I do retake after retake. We're going to stop. We're going to stop. I tell you what, that's it for this video, and that's it. All we're going to do now. Cheers, many thanks, subscribe twice. What the hell, subscribe 3 times, but make a comment. Go on, make a comment. Cheers, much appreciated. Till next time, cheers.